Welcome to Minnesota.
Thank you, Madeleine.
I want to respect your time here, so I might move pretty quickly through these questions. So just to get started, the Archdiocese has said it's committed to transparency and accountability. And so what I'd like to ask you is, will you release the findings of the private investigations of Archbishop John Nienstedt?
It's certainly a complicated question, Madeleine. And since I've arrived here in the Twin Cities and I've been speaking with people, I realize it's a issue that's very much on the mind of so many of our faithful Catholics and just the community at large. And I think it would be difficult for us to move forward without giving some kind of an accounting.
And what does an accounting, what does that mean? Does that mean saying here's what the investigation found out?
I'm also, at the moment, I've been studying the materials and trying to figure out what's a way in which we're able to do that so it's fair and responsible. As many people have noted already, there are obviously going to be questions of confidentiality for people that participated in the investigations. So we're going to try to be able to share with those who are so interested, and certainly the Catholic faithful and the members of the community, to give it some accounting of what it was that the investigation covered and how it is that and what the results would have been.
Any kind of timetable on that?
You know, I'm still working through the documents. It's going to take me a little bit of time. I'm really grateful that I have a little bit of time at the moment to be able to work through that. I know it has to be a priority. It's certainly a priority for me, and so I'm hoping that I'll be able to respond better to that question the next time you ask.
Okay. And will parishioners be told how much was spent on these investigations?
I think that, as I said, I'm not exactly sure what the parameters will be, but I would think that that would be a natural thing to be able to share with people.
So will you share it?
Assuming that we're able to give a good determination for what the costs were.
Okay. And then, has the Archdiocese turned over everything to police and prosecutors that they've asked for?
In the time that I've been here, nothing's been asked for. We haven't had that situation. My understanding is that we're everything that we've been working very closely with the authorities, and also obviously there's always a judge or a court that's able to decide those things as well.
So, but would you say to the lawyers and the other people who work in the Chancery, look, if the police or the prosecutors ask you for any information, please turn it over?
I think obviously we have to be cooperative. We also have to recognize that there are some documents that are privileged. So I think that also, and that's very fair, I think, from both sides. And so certainly being cognizant of the parameters of the law, that we want to be able to cooperate fully.
Okay. And so the first hearing in the criminal case is next week, and this is the case filed in Ramsey County that charges the Archdiocese with 6 criminal counts for failing to protect children from now the former priest, Curtis Waymeyer. How will the Archdiocese plead at this hearing?
You know what, I'm not exactly sure. We certainly have a little bit of time to consider that as well. I know the matter is being studied very carefully. I'm very comfortable with the council that we have representing us, and I know that we've been in dialogue as well with the county authorities.
Because that's not a lot of time. I mean, that's a week from today.
Exactly.
So how are you going to decide in the next 7 days how to plead?
Well, it's going to be the same way that anybody would decide. You really have to carefully look at the material. You have to figure out what's. Of course, we want to plead the truth, and then also to be able to figure out what is what's correct. And I need a little bit more time to do that.
And for clarification, I don't know if the first
Is a pleading.
It is a pleading. I checked. Yeah. And so who makes this decision about how to plead? I mean, are you the person who will make that final call?
Absolutely. And that's at the moment, that's the burden on my shoulders. But I don't do that on my own. And I think I'm receiving very good counsel. And I know there are many people that are very interested in not only the archdiocesan situation in this case, but in the life of our local church. And so I'm comfortable that I'm getting good advice.
Do you think that the Archdiocese is guilty?
I think that that would be one of the things that would be decided by a court. And I certainly have read with great attention the charges that were leveled against the Archdiocese. I think that responses are being prepared on each of those issues, and I think that it'll be up to the courts to decide that.
Okay. And so far, so moving now to bankruptcy, one of the other big challenges you're facing. So far, the Archdiocese has accumulated about $2 million in legal costs. And that's a lot of money for the Archdiocese. That represents, according to the bankruptcy filing, about 7% of the Archdiocese's total net assets. And of course, the Archdiocese has the legal right to spend that much money on lawyers. But my question for you is, do you personally think that it's morally right?
That's a good question. And one of the things that I've been learning about bankruptcy as well is that it really does enable an organization, in this case the church, to move forward. And we certainly really rely on the judge in that case to be able to determine what's reasonable and what not only helps the Archdiocese, but also the creditors. And so as we come to see that there is really a responsibility to our creditors as well, and I think that to be mindful of that and to certainly be sure that there's no waste, we want to make sure that we have the best counsel that's available. And I'm once again trusting on the advice that I'm getting, but also know that the courts are very attentive to costs, and that if there was something that weren't reasonable, that they would be letting us know that as well. But in terms of the moral analysis, I have a great interest, obviously, in making sure that the work of the church continues in the Archdiocese. And so certainly to be able to do whatever it takes to be able to assure that we're able to meet our obligations and to be able to continue. And unfortunately, in a litigious society, and where we need very, very fine lawyers, all who are involved, so that rights are recognized and respected, it's costly.
Okay, so over the course of the last 2 years, I've spoken to more than 100 victims of clergy sex abuse, and a lot of them are so deeply harmed by what happened, not just by the trauma of the abuse, but the betrayal that they feel from the Catholic Church. And some of them have struggled with marital problems, drug and alcohol problems, employment problems, mental health problems. And so given all of this suffering, why not just say, you know what, we're going to look under every nook and cranny, we're going to try to find every asset we can to give to these victims rather than go through this protracted legal proceeding?
Well, really, I think that the protracted legal proceeding that you described is really the way in which we're able to go under every rock. And it's a way of making sure that we're doing that in an equitable way. And unfortunately, it's very costly. But even to make sure that we're really making available those assets, and that eventually they're going to be divided in a way that's just.
And moving now to this question, another thing you're inheriting is this issue about what to do about monitoring. So there are a number of priests who are no longer in ministry, priests of this Archdiocese, who are living in communities in Minnesota who've been accused of abuse, in some cases admitted to abusing children. And this has been a subject of great scrutiny and concern about the Archdiocese monitoring program. And Ramsey County Attorney John Choi most recently was criticizing the monitoring program. So I'm wondering what changes you think are needed to make sure that these priests, in some cases who've admitted to abusing children, are not harming children in our community.
Yes. I would say that great strides have already been made in that area. And so some of the difficulties that have been pointed out before with monitoring have already been corrected. I think it is a great challenge, not only in the church, but in society at large. And so trying to figure out how it is that we help people to move beyond these situations, while at the same time making sure that we're, as best we can, we're creating safe environments where we're able to protect our children.
What are the strides that have already been made?
Well, I think that, for example, the staff that has been assembled here to deal with those issues I think that there's a very high level of sophistication in working with those priests. I think that the Archdiocese in many ways has raised the bar very high for dioceses around the United States in terms of monitoring. Now,
the prosecutor is going to disagree with that because he said that, would you commit today to sending a letter to the families who just live on the same block, say, as some of these priests who have just admitted to abusing kids? I mean, would you agree to notify them?
I haven't had a chance even to speak with the prosecutor about that, or about the difficulties that are there.